let me introduce next speakers. It's a panel about bringing East and West, so lobbying from Eastern Europe and Central Asia. And anybody can record our conference, so no problem. We invite to this panel Mr. Michael Siegler. So he is our long-term member of IGAPA, CEO of his MC Public Affairs company, and member of advisory board of FIPRA network, which is like a famous PR network in Europe. And he worked with like lobbying and client representation. So also Anastasiia Zernova, attorney law with LL.M, expert on Ukrainian National Bar Association, international business mediator, JAR professional, and she is co-author on public advocacy on integrity on lobbying. It's like lobbying law in Ukraine, which was implemented. Mr. Tiku, he is associate professor in Moldova State University and University of Bucharest, Romania, member of Moldovan Parliament from 2012 to 2021, Minister of Youth and Sport, author of 15 books which published in Moldova, and he also like big expert on his country. Also member of Ukrainian Parliament Yuri Kamelchuk, member of Ukrainian Parliament Rostislav Tistik, member of Ukrainian Parliament Artur Chernoborov, and Tatiana Korotka, Deputy Business Ombudsman of Ukraine. So we will discuss with them also regulation of lobbying law. So it's new lobbying law in Ukraine, which is interesting case, like on regulation. And also from Eastern Europe, we have Kadir Toktogulov. I'm sorry if I misspell, former ambassador of Kyrgyzstan to United States and Canada, prior diplomatic appointee in Washington, D.C. He has worked as presidential spokesman, and also he do journalism for Associated Press, and also, of course, he coverage stories and information from Central Asia, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, so will be very insightful. And also Dina Shahislam, also our member for a long period from Kazakhstan, so she worked at JAR professional and represent also Government Affairs Professionals Association in Kazakhstan. She worked for United Nations Development Program in Japan before, and also working internationally. And Daria Miret, her attorney is in Les Lawyer Association, so he's expert in law and also do some legislation work. And also she very experienced person in regulatory policy work. So for today we will start, I think, from main question to Anastasiia Zernova, because she will represent what happens with lobbying law in Ukraine, how it was originally. And it will be perfect case to discuss like new regulation in development democracy. And after that we will move into like Moldova and Central Asia to compare this experience, and we'll ask Mr. Siegler to share his experience because he moved lobbying law in Slovenia and he leads Association of Government Relations Professionals in Slovenia, which will be pretty interesting panel for now. So Anastasiia, please start your presentation, and we have a lot of speakers in this panel, but we will try to move in very fast with that. Yeah.
Hi everyone, for me it's an honor to be here. I came from Ukraine to explain for you how it was this long journey for implementation of the lobbying law in Ukraine. We started in 2017, like it was mentioned in the previous panel, but it was not the first start of the implementation lobbying in Ukraine. The first steps was in 1998. Can you imagine long journey for Ukraine. In 2017, we made the draft of the law of public advocacy or public affairs. And even our European colleagues said that it was one of the best draft of the law, and Ukraine is on the right direction of the implementation of the lobbying law. I'm sorry, we have a right microphone. If I have to repeat, I will repeat. During the last 7 years, our European colleagues and international partners worked with the Ukraine about the implementation of the law, lobbying law. In 2021, it was a lot of discussion about the oligarchs, about the influence of our state and the process of policy making in Ukraine and decision making. That's why it was even proposed one plan how to minimize the influence of the oligarchs in Ukraine. In 2023, we implemented their state anti-corruption strategy, and one of the clauses was to pass the lobbying law. But in 2023, the Greco, you know about this organization in European Union, they mentioned one of the main recommendation for us to pass the lobbying law. That's why we move very impressive and very quickly in this way. I worked my 10 months. I worked in a National Agency on Corruption Prevention on the position of the head of the Department of Stakeholder Engagement and ensuring anti-corruption acts. And it was my work to work with the external and internal stakeholder, with the civil society, with our business associations to implement this lobbying law. We start to work with the European colleagues because it's very important to receive the feedback from their partners who ask us to pass this law. That's why it was difficult, and I think on the panel discussion we maybe briefly will mention what happened in Ukraine, but we made this job. European colleagues even described it. It was really difficult, but when Ukraine made this job, they said that in the wartime, it's a good law. It's really difficult because we have a lot of restrictions about the Russian influence on our economy and the process. We today discussed about China, and it was very important to implement the right law. I just wanted to congratulate you to say that today is the first day of enforce of the lobbying law in Ukraine. In 12th of March, President signed this law. Yesterday it was published in our main newspaper, and according to the law, the first day is today to enforce. The law consists only from the 18 articles. It's definitions, principles, restrictions. It's about the registered, transparency registered, and we try to do it in the way how it will be in the European Union, how it is in European Union, because we are very close to Europe. But we analyzed our experience of our American colleagues, and thanks for that you have many years of your lobbying law and your market works. It showed to us how it can be in Ukraine. That's why I will just say for you briefly, restrictions about the lobbying law, it's to protect our national interests. Because we know how Russia influenced before and what happened right now in Ukraine. That's why main restrictions is about who cannot be a lobbyist in Ukraine. If you wanted to be a lobbyist, you have to register it in a transparency register. Register will be created in 6 months after this day, let's count. It will be ethical rules according to which you as a lobbyist, if you wanted to work, has to accept. And the main institution who will control and monitoring the work of the lobbyist will be National Agency on Corruption Prevention. It's a strong institution, it's independent institution. That's why, to our opinion, in Ukraine, it is the best institution. We will change the law because we know how it's important to check every time the relevant situation, the law. That's why I just wanted to say that maybe to wish good luck to Ukraine. It's a new step of our journey to work in the lobbying law. And I'm thanks for the previous colleagues from the panel who mentioned about the recommendations OECD. It's very important because in European Union you don't have the directive, you don't have like templates of the legislation. That's why every time each country in Europe implements the lobbying law according to the relevant situation and even the institutions. That's why my last point will be maybe to invite you to Ukraine to build integrity with us. And it's a great option to lobby not only in the parliament, because in most institutions in Ukraine, it's a different levels of the lobbying, and most in the parliament. In Ukraine, we decided to open the market on all levels. That's why you can lobby in our parliament, in the cabinet of ministry with our institutions on the regional level and on the local level. But what is the main point? You can lobby only the regulatory legal acts. We decided to make step-by-step the lobbying, to build the culture, to explain to people how the lobbying work, and after to spread the spheres, because you know that it can be even the lobbying in absolutely in different spheres. But step by step, we will move on this way. Thanks, Kate.
Yeah, thank you. So, as you see, for new regulation in like Eastern European countries, it's around 8-10 years to create this regulation. So it's pretty interesting. Let's compare that maybe with Slovenia. So Mr. Siegler originally, like, he worked as a lobbyist in European Union, but he also creates regulation in Slovenia, and they have pretty good regulation there. So I have a question to you: how many years you like work till you get this regulation, and is it was something the same which Anastasiia just like explained? So it was like anti-corruption institution and also some like pressure from European Union, or it was like more market-based work? But we have competition with like lunchtime, so I ask all speakers to be, you know, like short in their points. So Mr. Siegler, please.
You are really a big inspiration, I must say that, because, you know, the things are evolving, and every year what I see is getting better and better, it's more integrated, and, you know, it's good that we organizations can share what is good, what is bad, and we help each other. And that's what it means. And as well, from this, how to say, organization, it's actually, if I may speak, right, regarding our laws, is actually that we had last year in the parliament, some of you, especially Maria Mrazi from Canada, she was also participating when we had a debate in the National Assembly and comparing these lobbying laws all over the, how to say, United States, Canada, elsewhere, also European Union, and so on. So for this, what I just heard from Anastasiia, Anastasiia, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm very excited that you actually get down this trip and you actually pass the law, which is very important, and that you have a register in which you will actually, everyone can enter, and it's actually to stop the interests and, how to say, illegal lobbying from how to say, the enemy, all the others. Let me say that when we were in Slovenia last year in the National Assembly, we did, how to say, express also the things about the law and the Foreign Agency Act, which actually meant that European Union, OECD itself, and as well European Commission, and all the others were actually debating also in comparison to the United States, the how to say what it would be with the Foreign Agency Act as well, because we know what's going on now in the world. We know that we have these how to say disputes which are in Ukraine and Ukraine, Russia, and then we have in Gaza, in Israel, and elsewhere. So, and we are also how to say in Europe very close where it could be a new conflict. As we are speaking, I'm now in Republika Srpska, just how to say training in NGOs regarding because they are now in the front of the regime of Dodik, who is the president here, and who wish to pass the law that all the NGOs are bad. They are foreign, how to say, by the Foreign Act. They are how to say spies. They are paid from somewhere else, and so. And he's actually promoting big Putin interests, and he wished to stay the independence in the way that he will be not aligned with the Bosnian Federation, but he will be on the state on itself and may cause big conflict. So we could have another conflict. But on another side, you have Serbia, who is actually to pass and become the member of the EU. So things are a bit hectic here, and there should be transparency involved. But nevertheless, so we hope to say with the Slovenian this experience which we have with the lobbying, transparency, we are sharing that here to Republika Srpska in the region. And you have there is a big opposition who actually wish to reach and being the part of the EU and the Western sphere, and as well who are in Serbia as well. And those, which there are such an interest, it's actually good to speak with them, to work with them. But back to Slovenia, right? So the last year, the law which was, and I will be short, it was actually passed in 2010. It was called the Law of Integrity and Anti-Corruption, which actually regulated the lobbying, that we got a lobbying register. We don't call it transparency as it is maybe in Ukraine, maybe in Belgium, in Brussels, or with the European Parliament, all the others. We have a lobbying register. It means that everyone can register if he or she would like to access the parliament, the government, and local governments, as you have at the same in Ukraine, and to lobby. And in the end, you get this, the license, you pay a tax, and you could lobby. For us, after these 10 years, we have seen an overview how it is the situation. And we, as an association of lobbyists, we weren't happy because we said everyone could be a lobbyist. Yes, it's true, everyone can represent the interest, even the NGOs and all the others should be in the register. Even, attorneys at law, even, some church organizations which are, if they are NGOs, everyone without exception should actually enter it. Because if you are, like the German model, if you are accessing the governments, you should be in the register and everything should be transparent. So you cannot bypass. Mm-hmm. And in this respect, when we have seen it, how the lobbying is done, and usually you have, by our experience, you have a competition between, the local parties. If you have political parties, you have the general secretary of those parties, and you have the local activists from these parties, and if they wish to achieve something, some company, they just call these political parties functionaries, and they will do whatever it takes with their ministers, and they will pass laws and whatever will do. So it's like a legal competition. And we just got some, scandals right now in Slovenia, which also was pushed that the Minister of the Justice Department, the lady, resigned because of this interference of and now the thing is that it's actually for us a big change happening in this respect, so that we'll be much more stricter regarding anti-corruption laws and the lobbying, which is good for us in the way that the government wish to push and put more transparency in the register.
Thank
so
you,
what is
Michael.
happening by now?
Yeah.
Yeah, just a word. So what we have done, it is that actually we established now, we had a National Association of Lobbyists, and now we are just as we speak establishing, which will be the new law, a chamber of lobbyists. So it will be actually, you have a bar chamber, right, which is the attorneys at law, and now we'll have a chamber of lobbyists. And this it is, that lobbyists could be also that we will have education. It means that we will actually pass licenses, we will educate them, because it's, you have to know how to behave within the parliament, within the ministries, and that we will actually train all the others against the corruption. So that it is, and we expect that in a year or two, this legislation will be passed. We are already, having agreed with the government that that will be done. And that's by my side everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. So I think that their experience is pretty iconic for, because some people said that, it's not the same to regulate like lobbying in Kazakhstan or in Slovenia, because, it's much more like stakeholders and so on and so forth. I don't see so big difference, because like regulation processes moving pretty the same. But let's ask also Mr. Titsu from Moldova, because as I know, you still haven't regulation, and with like new government, you have a chance maybe to moving forward to like new lobbying regulation, transparency regulation. And as we discussed in panel about Latin America, which was very insightful even for me, because in my practice I didn't work before in Latin America, but they think that, for example, in Brazil, which more like global integrated in economy side, they will move into regulation of lobbying. So what about Moldova? When you was in parliament, do you work on such regulation? Do you think that Moldova needs this regulation? And if so, how you see some pathway to that? And if possible, let's be shortly. Yeah, thank you.
Well, I would like to say twice thanks for Ukraine. First for Katerina for inviting me, and second for Ukrainian army to keep Moldova safe from Russian invasion. Of course, the issue we discussed is not on the agenda in the Republic of Moldova. We are facing a full-scale hybrid war of Russia against the Republic of Moldova, which is trying to keep us under its own influence. And this is happening 30 years of independence. And just imagine that in the last 13 years, the political landscape in Moldova changed 7 times, from pro-European to pro-Russian. And that is directly linked to what I'm going to say about lobby and advocacy, because you agree on the idea that both advocacy and lobby work in a democratic society, in a society with human rights and rule of laws, with anything which is connected to democratization. Unfortunately, in these 30 years, Moldova was in the same time for 15 years under neo-communist autocratic regime and under oligarchic regime. So I would say with Piotr said about Poland, there is a negative reaction regarding lobby in Republic of Moldova, because it's associated with traffic of influence, with conspiracy, with interests of oligarchic groups, of business group, because lobbyists mostly 30 years in Moldova were trade union, NGOs and businessmen. And there is a strong Transnistrian lobby inside of Moldovan politics. I mean here the separatist region, which is under the Russian control and which had a strong relation with government in the Republic of Moldova. So it was 20 years ago agenda of parliament. Our second president put the issue of lobby regulation in parliament, but it wasn't taken seriously, and the last debate, the last debate was in 2011 maybe, because people simply consider it as a negative issue. Most Moldovans influenced by advocacy, And myself, I started from advocacy, then I became a lobbyist and finally politician. And I would say that the best way to promote an idea and a cause is to start to think about politics. Because my own experience as advocacy and lobbyist for rights of Soviet regime victims showed me that it's happening only when it's democratic regime first, and for sure when you are politicians. Briefly, I will tell my own story because our law on Soviet victims in 1991, because of return of pro-Russian forces, was changed, and almost 50,000 people were expelled from the right to be considered victims of Soviet regime. Because they thought that they were born in Siberia or Kazakhstan, so they have no rights to be considered like this. And for 27 years this law was in function. I rise up as a leader of opinion in this issue starting from 2010 when democratic context changed. And finally I entered into the parliament on this wave, and I contested in constitutional court this law. Constitutional court said I'm right, and they provided for almost 5,000 people. Imagine, from 50,000 they died almost 40,000 people, which were these victims of deported. They died without being recognized as such, and that means monthly loans, that means a huge amounts of rights. And finally in 2021 we succeeded to change it. Another big problem is the property, because when the pro-Russian forces return, they change the law according to which they reduce the chances to restore properties and the lands and many other issues. So we are fighting in this way of being between the European Union and Russia, and this is a big problem not only for advocacy and lobby. This is a big problem for the future of democratization of the Republic of Moldova. As regard to NGOs, because it's a very influential, sometimes especially they influence during the autocratic pro-Russian forces as opposition force. But Moldova is such small country that when NGOs become very soon ministers or deputies, they simply forget the cause they fought for. And that's because the problem of politicization of NGO and civil society is quite high, and simply it doesn't work. What is the future? Simply, I don't know. Everything is depending on the future of Republic of Moldova, because Putin, he doesn't need a war in Moldova. He needs to win elections, presidential this year, the next year the parliamentary election. Actually, Putin had a majority in Moldovan parliament up to 2021, and he had his own Minister of Defense and Internal Affairs in government of Republic of Moldova. Why he need wars? He doesn't need the democratization, he doesn't need any change related to any kind of rapprochement between Republic of Moldova and European Union. That's briefly, bluntly, and sadly from one point of view, but this is the short story of Moldova.
Thank you, thank you. So I think that Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine moving pretty in the same direction, and I think like in some 5-10 years you also will have some regulation, because I see also the same trends in elections and campaigning. So something like starting to be trendy as like a tool in Ukraine, then it became to be trendy in Georgia, then in Moldova. So it's pretty the same trends. So let's move to experience from Central Asia, and Mr. Toktogulov, Kadir Toktogulov, who was ambassador of Kyrgyzstan to the US and Canada, which great honor, and I think you very deep understand difference without this mentality, right? And difference in business culture. So can you explain to us like your vision on regulation on lobbying regulation of lobbying in Kyrgyzstan? Because Kyrgyzstan used to understand here in Washington DC as more like democratic dynamic state, even than Kazakhstan, for example. So what do you think about regulation? Do you need this regulation? And what do you see as, also some new tools for Western business to work in Kyrgyzstan? Like regulation will help with that or no? So share your thoughts about that, please. Floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's a great honor to be part of this discussion. And I was in Washington just last week, so I missed this just by a few days. So it would have been great to be there in person with you. On the lobbying, there's no particular legislation which has the name lobbying in Kyrgyzstan, but foreign businesses and local businesses, they're all free to participate in various business associations that work closely with the government, including with Parliament and MPs, to discuss upcoming legislations and to discuss the kinds of changes that need to be introduced to improve business environment in Kyrgyzstan. So that part of part of the work is pretty free. There's no particular, except for if unless you're doing something with religion or elections, for example, that there are restrictions on those issues. So there are all kinds of business associations that I know are very effective when it comes to their work and with the government and advancing their interests in Kyrgyzstan. There's the latest development that concerns advocacy and lobbying would be the legislation bill that was sent to the President for signing is on non-government organizations or non-profit non-commercial organizations, which now it's yet to be seen in terms of how it would impact the NGO sector, but one of the requirements would be for non-government organizations, non-commercial organizations that receive foreign funding to actually explicitly have to announce, have that part of the label anywhere that they publish anything on their own behalf. So that legislation, once signed and probably will be signed, will affect certainly the way non-government organizations will work with the government, with Parliament, but also in terms of advancing and discussion on various topics, issues, including political issues. For foreign businesses, it's fairly easy to be part of conversation here in Kyrgyzstan.
Can you give some brief examples of good JAR work or some good JAR cases which was transparent in Kyrgyzstan? So maybe it's like American Chamber of Commerce, or maybe it's, I don't know, JAR Department of Imperial Tobacco, or maybe it's some local association, which, not classified information, but more like all people in political sphere know that, I don't know, Kyrgyz Agriculture Association doing great. So can you give these examples to us?
Well, I would not have a specific case off the top of my head, but I know that, for example, American Chamber of Commerce and other International Business Council, which majority of their members would be foreign-owned companies. They've been pushing for lessening the burden of companies in Kyrgyzstan. So payments to the social fund are expected to decrease in near future. So that would be probably one of the big sort of victories for business associations in Kyrgyzstan, because the taxation, social payment burden was pretty huge, which also then pushed some companies and businesses to then work in the gray area, sort of, not really stating true figures for salaries and income of their, and just generally turnover and profits for companies and their employees. So that would probably, sort of one of the recent cases that I can tell you about. But, generally, business associations are pretty effective and are able to work freely with the government. So that's, one of the positive sides of the business environment in Kyrgyzstan.
Thank you. So let's ask Mrs. Muretz, as a lawyer also who worked with regulatory policy, her point of view on regulation as a lawyer. And do you see some trends that market of government relations is moving forward? And after voting for lobbying law, and after that, I will ask 1 minute for every speaker to choose one case which was successful government relations case in their country. So, Daria, floor is yours, but also please be shortly. Yeah.
Yes, okay, thank you, Katerina. Anastasiia has already spoken in some detail about the Ukrainian law and lobbying, and the only thing I want to add is that it's not yet fully clear how the law will work in practice, since it has not even entered into force yet. Additional regulations have not been adopted, and the transparency register has not been created. But this law was the adoption of the lobbying law is key recommendation of the European Commission and the group of states against corruption prior to the commencement of negotiations for Ukraine's accession to the EU. And also the adoption of the lobbying law was being a component of government's anti-oligarchic action plan. And I want to know that the adoption of the lobbying law in Ukraine and its implementation, it's a signal to partner countries about the ability to implement reforms and Ukraine's readiness to work according to the international standards. So let's see in the future how it works in practice.
Thank you, very short and clear. So, Octavian, which case you can point in Moldova as good government relations advocacy or lobbying case in your country? It can be international, can be local, can be grassroots. So just 1 minute, the most interesting case from your side in your country.
Well, the most successful, of course, local government reform, because we have a quite powerful community of local administration, which are represented many times by independent mayors, which made part, and partly the decentralization of Moldova and everything which is connected to the local administration in the terms of European change related to calm to this community of local authorities. We have successful in 2000 and in 90s the rights of especially the lobby is very important in the period when Moldova went out of Voronin regime, communist regime in 2009. And the pro-European government started to work with NGOs. It's very important the support of international organizations which work with NGOs, because they provide they empowers in some time this NGO to act, to put pressure on government, and of course it's important that many of previous advocates of lobbyists became politician influencer or they came from this sector of lobby and activists. This is a particularity of Moldova because being a very influential lobbyist or advocacy, especially advocacy, you have a good chance to become politicians. It's not a key of success in implementing this issue, but in many cases it works. In ecology, we have also especially related to Transnistrian sector where we have factory of Transnistrian oligarch related to Russia, which under the law. But in any case, you should know that on Transnistria issue, we have a lot of problems. I was thinking when you asked me what to present about the advocacy for human rights in Transnistrian region, which is provided by Promolex, a very influential NGO which is working on the sector of human rights, respect of human rights in Transnistria region, and mostly because of their activity in making noise and public this activity of separatist regime in Transnistria and against democracy, against human rights, imprisonment, and many other issues. So we have successful stories, we have kind of experience in advocacy and lobby, but in any case, I have told many people look at the lobby as a conspiracy, as something is negative, as group of interest, especially related to business, especially related to illegal arrangement between separatist regime and Chisinau and so on.
Thank you, Octavian. Michael, please 1 minute about like best case of government relation or advocacy from Slovenia. You can represent one from Slovenia, one from European Union, because I know that you practice there also, and yeah. So please, and we will finalize with Anastasiia, and we'll move forward to a short lunch break or networking break, and come back 3 p.m. So Michael, do you have some case in mind to explain to us for this minute?
The cases which we do lately, what I'm doing with the lobbying cases. Okay, when it is what we do is actually the legislation itself, which will be passed now by this new lobbying law. That's number one. But the cases which are doing a lot is in the area of green energies, which I've always am involved in regarding hydrogen and everything. What we are here very afraid from it because it's connected and linked with the European Union. You know that we wish to have the independence from the Russian gas anyway, and that's why the Europe it's all full now. Also the green transition within electromobility, as well. You know, solar, wind, which I'm always saying, right? But this actually came to the conclusion that now in Europe, what we have found out with this lobbying of the EU, European Commission, the Parliament, and all the others, that you have a flood of Chinese companies entering the market with the mobility and with the cars. And that's why, you know, in Europe, all how to say, European manufacturers of the cars will have very, very high prices of production, as well because they don't have the actual access to the resources with the resources of, you know, to the lithium and all the others, which the Chinese have, and you know, and that's the problem. You know, it's the competition prices. And now what it is, there are big eyes towards in Europe that this new European Parliament, new European Commission in the autumn will actually take another measures and will protect more the European companies in this respect. So we will lobby a lot in this respect. Also, the other things which we are doing a lot of the, you know, in Slovenia, the lottery laws, which are now the lobbying, and the last which it is, where I was involved, and I was asked kindly by the President of the Republic and all the other, how to say, NGOs. We were just working on the initiative, which I was working here pro bono, like, regarding euthanasia, which you have in Canada, United States, and all the others. In the respect that the new law, which was submitted to the parliament with 5,500 voters and signatures, that would pass the Slovenian parliament. But because the conditions in Europe and elsewhere are so tough, I was lobbying, in the way that the law, it's a big tackle and a problem. So we were lobbying for referendum, and now we'll have referendum in that.
Thank you.
So that's it.
Thank you. So as you see, people with experience in lobbying, we ask one case, but they try to represent different case, because they know that if you have stakeholder, it's better to represent all issues in one period. So Anastasiia, last point from you, and after that we will move forward to industrial lobbying. So Michael originally starts this discussion, but it will be 3 p.m. So last point from you and conclusion also from your side.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be the first and the last. I'm, as a professional lobbyist, can talk about cases a lot, but I just wanted to say not about my cases, about Ukrainian cases when really Ukraine unite. And it was a couple years ago, it was a project Prozoro about e-procurement system. And World Bank even mentioned that this is the best instrument about the e-procurement in the world. And Ukraine is happy to share our experience. Right now, in a wartime, we unite on a project of a dream. It's a digital ecosystem of reconstruction of Ukraine, where all companies united on a one platform, and you can see in what regions who reconstruct Ukraine and which money we used. That's why we try to be in some moments the first. It's a pity that war press us to move quickly and speed, but we are ready and we are open to share our experience even in a wartime. About the lobbying law in Ukraine, it's a new journey for Ukraine, and I hope we can show our integrity not only to European Union, to all over the world, and it's very important for the democratic countries. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so good example of lobbying, it's lobbying on lobbying law in Ukraine, so it's like looks a little weird, but it's a good example.